Okay, calm down.
So there's a lot I want to ask you about. Let's start off with one of the central kind of claims of your letter and your resignation, which is that what is happening now in Gaza is a genocide. And as you said, I know in other interviews that's a very charged word, it's a very politicized word, but there is a real definition to it. And you are someone who's a human rights attorney. So why is it genocide? What's happening?
It is a very charged word. It's a very abused word. People claim it where it doesn't exist for political gain, and they deny it where it does exist for political reasons as well. But I look at it through the lens of the UN Genocide Convention and the law as it stands there. Genocide, and by the way, the convention is not just about punishment of genocide, it's about prevention of genocide. So it's not the kind of thing you can wait for the verdict of a court after mass murders have taken place and people have been purged from their lands. So I said we shouldn't be so reticent to address what looks very much like emerging genocide. And if you just look at the Convention on Genocide and you see the acts that are laid out that are genocidal acts, things like serious harm, including bodily harm, killings, which we've already seen, more than 10,000. That number is going to go up just in a matter of a few weeks. We've seen that number of killings. The imposition of conditions calculated to bring about a destruction of conditions of life calculated to bring out destruction. That one is non-controversial by now because of the siege on Gaza, the closure that's been in place for many, many years, which is specifically designed to affect the living conditions of the Palestinian people, limiting the amount of food and fuel and water and sanitation and medicine and construction materials and anything necessary for a dignified life, calculated to make sure that it's not a place where people are going to want to survive, making it hard for them to survive. All of those acts so clearly documented. But what I said was very unique about this was the degree to which Israeli authorities have been explicit in their expressions of intent, because the Genocide Convention requires a specific intent to destroy in whole or in part a particular group as such, a group defined in this case as Palestinians in Gaza and Palestinians more broadly. Normally, you've got to dig through all sorts of dark, sealed, secret records to identify intent in genocide. Here, you had the president, the prime minister, senior cabinet officials, senior military officials, and others, think tanks associated with and working with the government, clearly, publicly, and on the record stating their genocidal intent, dehumanizing Palestinians, denying there's a difference between civilians and combatants, calling for wholesale wiping out, calling for a new Nakba, the prime minister invoking a biblical verse that refers to wiping out everybody, men, women, children, suckling babies, livestock, the whole population, sparing them not, according to that verse. And this is, I mean, every day there are more and more. This is the sound of impunity, because people don't openly declare these things in public unless they're absolutely certain they're not going to be held accountable. So they have to be held accountable. And in this case, such an extraordinary case of very clearly stated intent on the public record, I said, you have a prima facie case of genocide, not genocide used in a metaphorical way, but a textbook convention-defined case of genocide. And then when you add to that the context of the actions we're seeing now, which is that this is just the latest phase in a series of ethnic purges that began in 1948 with the Nakba, and then continued from 1948 and 1967 inside portions of Israel where there were other ethnic cleansings taking place. After 1967, continuing unabated in the West Bank, to the point where the West Bank, you know, you've seen pictures of the map. There's very little left of Palestinian life in the West Bank. It's all settled. And now you see the final portion of that move, which is the ethnic cleansing in Gaza, starting with the north of Gaza and working their way systematically and horrifically southward toward the gate with Rafah, with Egypt, clearly with the intention of ultimately making living conditions impossible for those who survive, in the hopes that they will then go and die in the Sinai Desert somewhere.
Right.
Problem then solved, you see. So it is a very clear case. And one of the other things I found most disturbing about it was the degree of complicity by powerful Western governments, including the US government, in these actions, because international humanitarian, so the Genocide Convention requires action on the part of states to stop this, to prevent it, and to stop it. And they're not acting to do that, to the contrary. And the Geneva Conventions require not just that states respect the Geneva Conventions, but they're also obliged to ensure respect for those conventions. In other words, to use whatever power influence they have over Israel to stop these atrocities from taking place. That's not what the US has been doing. To the contrary, they've not only been breaching that, they've been taking it to the next level of complicity by funding, arming, providing diplomatic cover, providing intelligence support, providing the veto in the Security Council in order to actively engage in supporting the Israeli assault on the people in Gaza. So it's very extraordinary. It would require a very principled and courageous position on the part of the UN, particularly the political leadership of the UN, which we have not seen. And at a moment like this, I mean, this is a moment in history that we are going to, those of us who get to survive, are going to remember for many decades in the future. At a moment like this, a careful, trepidatious, lackluster response is a breach of all of the norms upon which the organization was founded. And so I said so. And I included that genocide analysis in the letter as well.